Oh my God, something terrible has happened.
Somebody got her.
Lynsie Ekelund disappeared. Time is our enemy. We're working towards bringing her home alive.
I didn't know what to think. This is total out of character.
I think you're the only one here that knows the truth.
Well, I did kiss her once.
It seemed like an unnatural relationship for a man in his 50s and a 20-year-old girl.
I wasn't in there in a 20-second.
And he was our main suspect, but we couldn't prove it.
Nobody likes to be labeled a monster.
This was a do-or-die interview, and probably the last bite of the apple we were ever going to get. Lynsie Ekelund was a 20-year-old college student who disappeared on February 17th of 2001. She lived in Placentia, California with her mother.
Lynsie is described as a Caucasian female, 5'7", weighing 112 pounds with brown hair and hazel eyes. The left side of her arm is partially paralyzed, and she has a tracheotomy scar on her neck.
When Lynsie was 5 years old, we were in a traffic accident. From the accident, she had a tracheotomy for several years. Her left side was impaired. She had no use of her left hand and arm. She was kidded a lot in school, but she survived that. She rose above it.
I first met Lynsie when she was in 3rd grade. I saw this little girl just as happy as could be. And I said, is she always this happy? Pretty much, always smiling.
On February 16th, on a Friday night, she was going to be spending the night at her girlfriend's. The next day at 11 o'clock, she had a routine of teaching English to little Vietnamese girls. And at about 11:30, they called me and said, Lynsie has not come. So I called everybody that she knew, and her friend said that she decided not to stay overnight. And I called Highway Patrol, the police, hospitals, everywhere. I was frantic. I didn't know what to think. This is total out of character.
Everyone loved Lynsie. So when Lynsie is missing and her picture is in all the storefronts, there was a sense of urgency. The community rallied completely.
Lynsie's case came to me as a missing persons case, so the course of action would be to start with a list of friends and associates, and then started talking to the people who had last seen her. That Friday night, Lynsie was with 2 girlfriends, Andrea and Amy, and a man named Chris McAmis. They had actually gone to San Diego. Nancy was not aware that Lynsie went to San Diego. Within just a few days, we started really bringing in other detectives to start looking at this, analyzing what could have happened. Some of the detectives interviewed Lynsie's friend, Andrea.
Let's talk about the night you guys all went to San Diego.
He had already gotten Lynsie.
Okay, so Chris picked up Lynsie on the way and then came out to get you?
Yeah. We went to pick Amy up, and we thought we were going to go dancing, but we went to Denny's.
When was the first time that you found out that Lynsie hadn't made it home? Who was calling you to tell you this? Okay. Does he sound concerned to you?
Yeah.
Friday night, Chris picked her up. I didn't know him, and we talked briefly. He seemed nice, and I walked out to the car with the 2 of them, and they drove off.
The 2 girls that she was with said that she was last seen with Chris. So I called and asked Chris McAmis to come to the station to speak with us.
By the time I dropped Lynsie off, she said that her mom would be upset if she came home like around sometime in the morning. She was just like, just drop me off at the corner, okay?
Which would be what time?
At like 4:30 or 5. I dropped her off at the corner and then I turned around and I went back home and went to sleep.
The story that Chris gave of him dropping her off 2 doors from the house, at first blush, you would think, oh, that doesn't really make a lot of sense. But then once we started investigating, we found other people, church pastors, friends that her mother knew, who she had also asked to be dropped off at that corner. Did you see anybody physically on Saturday, or did you stay to yourself?
Went out and I had dinner like at Ruby's.
Mm-hmm.
So
How long? Have you guys ever been romantically involved?
we kissed one time.
Mm-hmm.
I emailed her like asking her if that possibility would be possible.
All right.
And then she says she still needs time with Matthew
Mm-hmm.
because like they just recently broke up.
Mm-hmm.
And then sometime after that I gave her an email back saying that's okay, that's no big deal.
Mm-hmm.
I said I'm probably still like trying to get over Heather.
We were trying to build an understanding of Lynsie. We then also turned our sights to Chris and want to try to get a picture of who he is. We quickly found out about a girlfriend by the name of Heather. She broke up with Chris and he did not take it well. She had to get a restraining order because she and her family were so afraid of him.
So you think you got a problem with anger?
Not anymore. I'm getting control of it finally.
You ever gotten mad at Lynsie?
No.
Have you and Lynsie ever gotten in an argument?
No.
Did you get in a fight with her that night?
No.
It was a piece of the puzzle. It's not definitive, but it's something that points in the direction that he is an individual who could be capable of violence.
What kind of car do you drive?
F-150.
It's a Ford.
Mm-hmm.
What color is it?
White.
And would you have a problem if I looked in your truck?
No.
He voluntarily took us out to the truck. Subsequent to that, he signed the paperwork for a consent search for his residence. We searched and didn't find any evidence. Also, there was a Wells Fargo surveillance camera that did pick up the street traffic, and we did catch a white truck going northbound, which would have been the route that Chris would have taken. And it corresponded with roughly the time of day that he said that he would have left her and then proceeded to his house. Time is our enemy. We're working towards hopefully bringing her home and bringing her home alive. We need to try to narrow the case down as soon as possible. Lynsie had a boyfriend named Matthew Ramirez. They were somewhat on again, off again. By his account, at the time that Lynsie disappeared, they were boyfriend and girlfriend. Matthew Ramirez came to Placentia PD and gave us a statement.
She meets people like there's no tomorrow, you know, I mean, and it's mostly guys, you know, and I know it's guys that aren't, you know, that are thinking, you know, oh, she's young, she's innocent, you know, I can get something from her, you know.
We asked Matthew to tell us about who Lynsie hung out with, friends and associates that we didn't know that we could contact. And at that point, we learned of the existence of a friend of Lynsie's named Marty. Marty was about a 58-year-old man who had befriended Lynsie.
To your knowledge, had he ever driven her home?
Yeah, I guess after a while, she just thought that, you know, after it started getting a little too much, you know, she'd tell him, no, I don't need a ride, you know, I can walk, it's good for me.
This was somebody that we did not know was in her life that we needed to talk to.
This Matthew is number one, okay? I mean, she is deeply in love with this guy.
What do you think happened?
You know, she tried to make it to Matthew's house and somebody got her.
He became somebody who came into focus that we needed to talk to.
I think everyone suspected Marty had something to do with Lynsie's disappearance because it seemed like an unnatural relationship for a man in his 50s and a 20-year-old girl.
We're investigating the situation with the disappearance of Lynsie. And we understand that you were one of our friends.
About 3 days after I filed a police report, there was a gentleman in the parking lot at work. His name was Marty Rossler. He gave me $150 in an envelope. He said this was Lynsie's. He was keeping that for her college books. Lynsie had never mentioned him before. It was a kind of a secret part of her life that I knew nothing about. And I questioned, why is this older man holding money for my daughter? How is he fitting into her life?
Your last name is spelled Pregenzer.
Right.
Can I see your driver's license? Just out of curiosity. You know that her mother told me that your last name was a different last name?
Yeah, well, I didn't, I didn't tell her mother. I didn't want her mother to start calling around and start doing everything, okay?
There were certain red flags that were raised with Marty. He gave a false name. He first identified himself as Marty Rossler. That was not his last name. So we have a person who's sketchy at best in terms of what people know about him.
And we just would like to find out what your relationship with her was.
I would say it was about in June or something like that, June or July.
Of this year?
Yeah. I saw this girl walking down Rose. And obviously, you could tell, she was handicapped in some manner. And I saw her this one day, and she's trying to carry stuff, like flower pots. And she dropped them twice, So I pulled over and I said, do you need some help, And she said, yeah. She said, I work up at the corner, okay, And so she got in the car, and I introduced myself, and I drove her up to the corner to the dentist office.
Lynsie didn't drive because of her disability. She started relying on him, and he offered to take her places.
Is it a safe assumption to say that you probably see her every day during the week?
Probably.
Are you looking for a relationship with this girl, or is it strictly a friendship?
She's just a handicapped girl. She tries to act normal. You can see that.
Does your wife know about
no
cab driving stuff?
No.
Are you concerned that your wife would find out about your friendship with this girl?
Yeah.
The fact that Lynsie is friends with a 58-year-old man and that it seemed to be secretive certainly raised concern for us. But we didn't have anything to hold him. When someone is missing and they become a high-profile missing, her picture was on the news, people were looking for her, keeping an eye out, so you often get sightings. Several days after Lynsie was missing, we got a report that Lynsie was seen in a local retail store with Marty. So of course now we're thinking, she's alive somewhere, he's got her, whether she's being kidnapped or by her own volition, but we believed that that was a credible sighting. So we brought Marty back in. You've been in her presence since last Friday.
I've been in Lynsie's presence
since last
week.
Saturday. We've already established in more ways than one. Don't shake your head no at me. It's a fine line of maintaining that authority and that presence, but at the same time trying to get them to explore with you what could have happened.
I don't know what to say, okay?
Is there a graceful way we can help you get out of this? You have to give them a reason to confess and an ability to do it to maintain their dignity.
You're telling me I was in there in a 20-second? I wasn't in there in a 20-second. I'm not gonna say, yeah, I was there in a 20-second. You're right. I'm saying I wasn't there in a 20-second.
He became very visceral in his reaction and flared up and was adamant that that was wrong. We believed that that was a credible sighting, but we couldn't prove it, so we couldn't hold him.
Lynsie was gone. She just vanished off the planet. I didn't know what to think.
every day getting up and going to bed and still not having any answers was extremely painful.
It's our top story. The search continues for a Placentia woman. Tonight, police are still no closer to finding Lynsie Ekelund, but her family refuses to give up.
About 7 months after Lynsie was reported missing, the case was assigned to me.
Now we have a new set of eyes to look at it and analyze what's been done, see what we've missed.
On his way back from San Diego to Orange County, Chris McAmis had an opportunity to drop off a total of 3 girls. The normal travel would have made Lynsie the second drop-off, but Chris decided to make her the last. And that just made no sense. Also, when you went back through his prior girlfriend relationships, there was an element of violence in each one of those. When I delved into the case, I looked at interviews, I looked at reports, and that took a lot of time. I also had other cases that were coming in, so your time gets split quite rapidly. But by April 5th of 2002, with all the information we'd obtained, all the inconsistencies with Chris, it was time to meet him face to face.
I asked Colonel Loomis to sit in with us.
Detective Douglas had taken a large color photo of Lynsie and set it right on the desk so that Chris would be able to see it. The intended effect was to soften him and to humanize her. This is her. Here she is, and she's gone. You know, what do you think happened to her? Help us.
You ever have a romantic relationship with her?
No.
Nothing ever led that direction?
Well, I did kiss her once, but it didn't lead anywhere else.
Lynsie was last seen with Chris. He told us he dropped Lynsie off about 4:30 in the morning, right at the corner, 2 doors from her home, on February 17th of 2001.
So you kind of wanted a relationship, but it didn't take off. Is that fair to say?
Not really. I kind of wanted like just, I don't know, something to fill the void from being single, I guess. I didn't really want a relationship.
Well, how long were you single?
He was very dismissive, treated it very light, but we knew we had an email from Chris that we found on Lynsie's computer where we believed Chris wanted more.
In an interview that you gave once before, you said that you were a little sick, that you kind of were interested in...
Well, we just kissed a couple times.
I mean, it's okay. So were you interested in her romantically, or...?
Just a little bit. I was more interested in, like, friends with benefits. So I was kind of wondering if, like, she would want to do the same thing.
And so through the investigation, when you find out that Chris has had incidents in the past with girlfriends that during rejection has caused him to either be violent or destructive, the worry was that maybe the same thing happened with Lynsie.
I think it was an accident. I think you took care of it the way you thought you needed to. And your thoughts are?
That's her opinion.
Of course it's my opinion. Did you kill her first?
No.
And really all I want out of this is her body back to her mom. That's really the biggest part of this whole thing. I think you should tell me what happened. How about it, Chris? Promise you'll feel a lot better.
It seemed that we would get close, and then he would pull back.
Did you have something to do with Lynnsie's disappearance?
No.
Chris, I think you're lying to me.
What?
All the circumstances point to you lying over and over and over.
At that point, we believed pretty strongly that there was foul play, and he was our main suspect in the disappearance of Lynsie Ekelund. but we couldn't prove it.
And you know the truth. I think you're the only one here that knows the truth. That's the truth.
So it's very frustrating because we had exhausted the case at that point. We have nothing to hold him. He is free to leave the station.
I was always hoping that she would come home, that there would be an explanation.
I have a grieving mother who has no closure because she's not sure if her daughter is alive or dead. Trying to get closure for her was really the goal.
Nancy worked extremely hard to keep Lynsie alive in everybody's mind.
I've kept all of her possessions in case she comes home.
After years of continuous investigating and trying to put the pieces together, the case went cold.
How can he just give up and hope that she's going to knock on the door someday and say, "Here I am"? I didn't hear much from the police for a long time after that.
I've been a police officer for 43 years, and the last 34 have been investigations. Coming to the DA's office in 2006, I had a chance to work in the trackers unit, which was just working cold cases, and I was in a position where I could work as long as I wanted on a case.
Larry's reputation was stellar. Meticulous, methodical, detailed, analytical. He's going to look at every single piece of evidence.
Because of the fact that it takes a long time to understand the case, I don't even contact the family. I don't want that pressure from them as to what am I doing, why am I going so slow. I want to be able to take as much time as I need to figure it out. When I have the opportunity to do a cold case, I ask for any information they can give me regarding the evidence they have. Do they have recordings of possible suspects? The more they have, the better. And if they do, then that's a case that I'm willing to take. There's huge differences between the guilty person and the innocent person. And you can see it in the videos.
I had called Matt, okay, to see, you know, if he knew anything. And I said, you know, Lynsie hasn't been home. Have you talked to her at all lately?
You look at what Marty does. The moment Marty discovers that Lynsie's missing, he decides to immediately try to find out if she's okay.
I mean, I think something happened to her, okay?
After looking at Marty's tape, I was very convinced that he was not guilty. This man was searching for Lynsie, which is not something that Chris McAmis did.
The last time I saw Lynsie was February 16th, 2001. There's no evidence that she was harmed. You never give up hope on your child, ever.
In Lynsie Ekelund's case, she disappeared in 2001, and I didn't start working the case in detail until 2008. Anything that they had, I wanted to look at. A lot of paperwork, but I'm mostly interested in the interviews. I look at all those recordings in detail, and that's usually where I find the guilty person.
Where do you think she is? I'd like to think that she's with friends right now. Still, or maybe somewhere. Like maybe she went to a different state or something like that. For all I know.
His comments were absolutely polar opposite to almost everybody else that was interviewed. Everybody else said, "Oh my God, I think she's been kidnapped. I think she's dead. I think something terrible has happened." He wasn't that worried about her being gone.
Well, if it turns out somebody killed her, what do you think should happen?
Find them.
I want to find them, then what? Go to jail.
You'd think somebody that really liked her, like Chris really liked her, kissed her the weekend before. She went missing on his watch. I mean, he was the last one to see her. He didn't protect her. You'd think he'd want to take that guy and ring him up, you know, and hang him. You don't see that anger, that frustration. It's not there.
And you were in a dating relationship prior to that?
Mm-hmm. Was anybody drinking? Any drugs?
No.
I listened to one of the interviews of one of the girls that was in the car when they went from San Diego and were dropped off back home.
Did you guys stop and get gas or anything, or stop and pick up some beer?
To get gas. We did not get gas on the way back.
If he used his credit card, maybe I can find out if there was a time stamp on when he got gas, and there was one usage of his credit card on that date. But it was up in Santa Clarita, which is 60 miles north of us.
Chris said that on the 17th, he dropped Lynsie off and went home to his apartment in Whittier, and that the only time he left was maybe to get some food.
Why is he buying gas up there when he said he's home all day?
How did we miss this credit card purchase that broke this case open? Just broke it open.
I look at his bank records and I find that he's receiving unemployment, and he also was putting cash, almost the same amount, during the same time period into his account. Where's he getting the money?
We discovered that Chris McAmis was working for his dad's company, kind of part-time, under the table. He was a backhoe operator, and they had a contract in the Santa Clarita area back in February of 2001.
Once we figured out that Chris was probably up there, he had access to a location with a tractor, and therefore, if he did kill Lynsie, then maybe the body's there in this area. We bring in the cadaver dogs. The dogs did alert that there is a body in that area, a human body. There could be another body that belonged to somebody else out there, because this doesn't say it's Lynsie's body. But when you look at the totality of the information we had, I'm pretty certain that Chris killed Lynsie and buried the body on that property. We spent the next year looking for the body because the chemicals that are emitted from a body, they go into the underground water source and they will move downstream under the ground. So it's hard to pinpoint it.
We don't know exactly where the body is, but we had so much evidence that pointed to Chris McAmis.
109996, checking in CIC. 785, no record in CIC.
On October 27th, 2010, we decided to make our move and arrest Chris McAmis for the murder of Lynsie Ekelund. This has been about 10 years after her initial disappearance.
When I was in the room prepared to talk with Chris, there was a lot on my mind. The biggest fear was that he would just clam up and not talk to us. It's very possible we're not gonna have enough to prove a case to have the DA file if we don't get a confession.
The court issued a warrant that allowed us to take Chris into custody for the purposes of an interview. If he did not make any incriminating statements, if he did not confess to anything, he was going to walk. So this was a do or die, make or break interview, and probably really the last bite of the apple we were ever gonna get.
You okay?
Yeah.
I'm investigator Larry Montgomery with the Orange County District Attorney's Office.
Okay.
And it's my ID, and here's my badge.
Okay.
I think you already met Detective Bryce Angel. He's going to be sitting in there too.
Hi, how are you?
Hi.
Although we had a lot of evidence against Chris McAmis, most of it was circumstantial.
It's very possible we're not going to have enough to prove a case to have the DA file if we don't get a confession. You probably want to know what's going on, what's happening, why you're sitting here. But first I have to advise you your rights. Is that okay if I do that?
Yeah.
Okay. You have the right to remain silent. Do you understand?
I understand.
Larry had come up with a strategy to present Chris McAmis with this mountain of evidence we had against him, kind of overwhelm him with what we had.
Take a look at the map here. This right here is Lynsie's house. That right there in the corner is where you said you dropped her off. Does that ring a bell with you?
Yeah, and then you turned
You
back
made a U-turn, you came back up here and continued. So what they did back then is they were looking for any cameras, and they found a camera that was at the walk-up window at the Wells Fargo bank, and they got pictures of all the vehicles that came by during the time period that you said you dropped her off. And they found one that was a white pickup truck. And they thought, okay, that matches what you said. That's yours. And we took it to a specialist and they see the actual distance between the door handle and the top, and there was a big difference in that by inches. The mirror on yours is white, and the mirror on that one was black. It wasn't your truck. Matter of fact, your truck did not go by that night. It wasn't there. So that told me, with everything else I had, you did not drop her off in front of her house that night. It didn't happen. That opens a big door. Why did you say you did? Is that because you did something to her or something happened? Okay.
For the next 45 minutes or so,
what the hell are you doing up in Santa Clarita on that day, going to a place where...
Larry proceeded to lay out this case in front of Chris McAmis.
And I contact the LA sheriffs, and I'm asking them, hey, listen, we got a situation where a girl disappeared, and they checked their records, and they found remains that we weren't aware of right up in that area. He went and recently got DNA from mother and dad of Lynsie and had that checked against the body, and it's Lynsie. Okay? To me, it's getting into the person's mind. I was bluffing when I told Chris that we had found Lynsie's body. My hope was that Chris would believe me and start to crack.
Okay, first I want to know how remains were found in Santa Clarita.
I didn't find them. LA sheriffs found them. So now we've got Lynsie up there, right in the area where you were, right at the time when you did not drop her off, and we have enough to prove the crime. Well, I need to know what happened so I can do what's right. Because right now, it's looking like could be a premeditated murder. You just wanted to kill her. Was it a premeditated thing? I didn't think it was. He's now admitting to us right there, no, it wasn't premeditated. It was a relief because it's a big mountain to climb to get to that point. But I was more interested in what he had to say. What exactly occurred? What happened between you and Lynsie?
I think I need a lawyer to talk to you about this with me.
Well, it's up to you.
California state law says you have to unequivocally request a lawyer, and this wasn't that. But I thought the very next thing out of his mouth is, I don't want to talk to you anymore. I want a lawyer. And I knew that that was when I had to say something.
Chris, nobody likes to be labeled a monster. And in this case, that's the way it's pointing. Only you have the other side of the story. Nobody is going to be able to speak for you. That's why we're here now.
That's it.
All right, what happened was, I was going to take her home.
Okay.
But then she was telling me, why don't I just sleep over your place? Because I don't want to upset my mom.
Makes sense, yeah.
So we went back to my place. I was trying to kiss her, and then she elbowed me in the chest. And then I went to my kitchen in my apartment, and I drank a lot of vodka. And then I went back and I tried to do the same thing.
Okay.
She pretended to be asleep, and I pulled her pants down, and I was totally drunk, and I tried to put my penis inside of her.
Okay.
She got up, said, "Oh my God, what are you doing? I'm calling the police."
Okay.
And she says, I'm taking you to jail. you're going to jail tonight. And she grabbed my home phone. She probably pressed 9-1, and then I got up and I kept telling her, please don't. Just forget about this. And when I got up and walked to her, she tried to knock me out with my phone, with my home phone.
Did she
hit you with it? Yeah, she, like this to my face.
Okay.
And being drunk, it enraged me. It set me on fire. And I grabbed her, threw her onto my bed, and I got her into a headlock.
Okay.
And she died.
I was in an adjacent interview room watching it on closed-circuit camera. I was texting because there were detectives at Placentia waiting to hear, and he confessed. He confessed, and they're writing back. No, he didn't. You're lying. He did not. Yes, he did. He just said he did it. It was surreal. It was surreal.
Then what'd you do?
Then I tried to figure out what I should do because I couldn't believe how it just happened that way.
Quickly, huh?
I couldn't believe it. I thought she was just gonna pass out.
Yeah.
And I ended up killing her. And I went over to my job.
Okay.
And I opened up a hole with my machine in the middle of the day and pulled her out and put her in there and covered the hole.
What time of day was it? Chris was under the impression that we had already found Lynsie's body, but we actually still needed his help to find her. And that's a little nerve-wracking. Where approximately was it that you dug the hole to put her? Right up in here? Why don't you mark just where it is? I just want to see if you're accurate. So you took off the side of that road.
You already know where it is.
He questioned us about us knowing where it was, and I told him there was a big flood there and things had moved, and we needed to find out where he originally buried the body.
How would you feel about going with us up to the ranch and kind of walking us through what exactly happened? It might shed some light on what you were thinking at the time.
Okay.
We drove with Chris to Santa Clarita, which is about a 2-hour drive.
890 OK Canyon Road.
We asked him to show us where he buried her.
About where this tree is, underneath there should be where she was.
Finding the body is very important. It's powerful evidence.
It's over in this vicinity.
But it could be way up there or way over here?
This tree all the way to that brush.
And you think it was about 3 feet down?
Yeah.
We had an obligation to find Lynsie and to bring her home.
Seeing the body deceased provides closure for some people. And in Nancy's case, she needed the closure.
The investigators who were searching the area told me the chances of finding Lynsie's body were small. On the last area that they were digging, they told me, Michael, if we don't find anything here, we're gonna have you proceed with a no-body murder case.
We finally got down about 6-8 feet, and we found a shoe.
Lynsie Ekelund was 20 years old, an adult who struggled to fit in at times. She was injured in a car accident at the age of 5. Her left side remained paralyzed even after 28 surgeries.
Finding Lynsie was extremely important because Nancy Ekelund needed the closure.
Somewhere in this area here is where.
We'd been out there a long time and still hadn't found anything. And then a shoe popped up. A couple digs later, another shoe came up and there was a human foot in it.
The coroner's office dig team got in there and they just slowly went deeper and deeper and deeper to a point where they had discovered and exposed Lynsie's skeleton remains.
I'm at work. I got a phone call. Detective Loomis said, Nancy, you need to come home. I'm thinking Lynsie's gonna be at the door. I knew it. After all these years, she was going to be standing there. When she told me that Lynsie was dead, my world fell apart. There was no hope left.
You really take these cases seriously. These are people's lives, and we have been entrusted legally, morally, ethically, spiritually to help these people in their worst time.
When they found Lynsie, she was wearing the gold bracelet that I had given her, and I'm wearing it, and I never take it off. So she's always with me, because that's her. I didn't have it polished or anything. It's just the way it was when she was found.
LA County filed charges of first-degree murder with special circumstances, which has to do with committing the crime in the process of doing a sexual assault.
The defense came to us and said that the defendant was willing to plead to a second-degree murder. That's a pretty big offer from the defense. At that point, I spoke to Lynsie Ekelund and explained to her all of the pros and cons of going to trial, and we made a decision to go ahead and offer him that second-degree murder conviction, because trials can be ugly. And Chris McAmis was sentenced to life in prison with parole eligibility of 15 years.
All of us that loved her, we could have spent the rest of our lives never knowing what happened to Lynsie Ekelund. It's not the closure we wanted for Lynsie. It's not the justice we wanted for Lynsie, but we got answers.
I miss her a lot. She was the most important person in my life. She still is. And it'll never be different.
We lost a bright ray of sunshine. She loved animals, she loved people. Lynsie had a zest for life.
She's in my heart, and that's where she needs to stay. Forever.